Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm grateful for that. Macro thoughts. I came across this Andy Warhol's $1 from 1961, courtesy of the Dominique Levy Gallery. And, my thinking is the price of his dollars will continue going much higher, just because of the turmoil and the extraordinary events we're seeing in the financial markets. 10th of August 2015, I wrote The Meltdown is Coming. It certainly feels like that right now. The narrative, this is Citibank analyst Stephen Englander talking about Janet Yellen. The narrative that she faces is that the US economy and asset markets are being sucked into the downdraft caused by oil, China, emerging markets, reserve manager and sovereign wealth fund asset selling. Commodities, currency war, the strong dollar, weak European banks, weak Japanese banks, weak US banks, and policy ineffectiveness, to name a few, which I think is spot on. You know, my wife was away for a few days and we've been married 20 years. The phrase, which I remember from the poem, the presence of your absence, certainly felt that. Ice Cream Cone, this is by Wayne Thiebaud. I like this drawing as well. And then I went back to Andy Warhol. I love Los Angeles and I love Hollywood. They're beautiful. Everybody's plastic. But I love plastic. I want to be plastic, said Andy Warhol. Let me put up his photograph. As soon as you stop wanting something, you get it. And finally, they always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. I like this triple Elvis by Warhol, and I'll leave you with one final quote. Everybody must have a fantasy. White House hopefuls Trump and Sanders captured New Hampshire, riding a wave of voter anger as traditional politicians, billionaire Donald Trump, who I spent the evening with in Trump in the 90s, late 90s. On Tuesday, and US Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont won the Democratic primary. Disenchanted with the economy and Washington politicians, voters in the first two US primary voting races have responded enthusiastically to candidates for the November 8th presidential election they view as outsiders. I concluded by saying it's not plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Everything changes, but everything stays the same. I'm saying it could be the real deal here. The government of our great country belongs to all of the people, Bernie Sanders. The US is saying that North Korea is expanding its nuclear program and have restarted a plutonium reactor. Moving to Syria, the logic of escalation is a dead end. The Russians are not going to let Assad use this war. That's in Politico. The consequences of the siege of Aleppo will be felt across the Middle East and perhaps beyond. Would Turkey dare to confront the Russians now dominating Syrian airspace in order to defend the refugees? And how would NATO respond to a clash involving Russia and one of its members? I follow a fellow on Twitter, but I can't understand his name because it's in Russian. But he posted a photograph of Russian T-90s seeing their first battlefield in Aleppo, Syria. Go back to my piece on the 5th of October 2015 when I said Putin fancies himself the flycatcher and Syria the fly trap. Naomi Shaban, who's been an advisor to President Assad for quite a long time, gave an interview to Reuters. She's saying Damascus aims to secure Syria's border with Turkey, recapture the city of Aleppo, which by the way is the oldest inhabited city in the world, with its latest military offensive. The offensive, one of the biggest shifts in momentum of the 5-year civil war and a decisive tipping point, has been crossed now, has brought government forces closer than they have been in years to a border crossing with Turkey that has served as the main supply route into rebel-held territory. There would be no let-up in an army advance which aimed to liberate cities and villages that were controlled by the terrorists for 3.5 years, and also an attempt to liberate the city of Aleppo from the crimes of terrorism, Shaban said. Damascus intended to control our borders with Turkey because Turkey is the main source of terrorists and the main crossing for them. I like this news that the UAE has created a happiness minister for social good and satisfaction. Now let's move on to the markets because a lot's been going on. Joseph Weisenthal, Deutsche Bank, is trading at less than 40% of book value. The CEO, John Cryan, tells employees Deutsche Bank is absolutely rock solid. My experience when people say those kinds of things just because they're the exact opposite. The cocoa that popped, these are these bonds that were issued by banks. Have a look at what's happened to Deutsche Banks. The US Treasury yield, 10-year yield, has dropped to a 1-year low, and the German 10-year was at its lowest in 10 months. Let's move on to the currency markets because, what have we been seeing? The euro, 112.80, touched a 4-month high of 113.88 overnight. Dollar index around the 95.96 level. Japanese yen, 114.75. But it did hit a 15-month high, 114.20 overnight. Swissy, 0.9727. That's a 4-month high for the Swiss franc. The pound, 144.76. The Aussie, which is 0.7080, so making a small rebound there. What else have we got? India rupee, 67.925. South Korean won 1198.70, the Real 388.60, Egyptian pound 782.85, and the rand back near the 16 level, and where it's a sell when you get up to 16, 15.90 preferably because it does move. Catch it right. Euro jumps above $1.13 as transatlantic gap 2-year bunds. US Treasury spread narrows. Have a look at Holger's picture. Dollar yen, I'll put up a 6-month chart, 114.76. Remember my target of 105. World tourism map, redrawn since attacks, epidemics, and migrants. Being redrawn at lightning speed as holidaymakers switch preferences prompted by terror attacks, epidemics, and migrant crises. Tunisia, after the jihadist attacks and the October 31st crash of a Russian plane, Sharm el-Sheikh, have devastated the tourism sectors in both countries. Muslim countries everywhere are the main users of the shift in tastes. Sector professionals say as tourists move to destinations they consider safe as long as they're also sunny. Overall, world tourism has never been in better shape. Nearly 1.2 billion people travelled abroad in 2015, an increase of 4.4% over the previous year. Tunisia, visitor numbers to Tunisia tumbled by 2 million in 2015, leaving coast resorts empty, hotels idle, and the economy in tatters. Tunisia's tourism sector accounted for almost 10% of the nation's economy. Turkey is another victim of attack fears. Germany's TUI, the world's biggest tourism group, said Tuesday that it had seen bookings to Turkey drop by 40% in the wake of an Islamic State suicide attack in Istanbul. Turkish media reporting that visitor numbers to the top Turkish resort of Antalya dropped by 17% last month. All Muslim countries are suffering to a greater or lesser degree, even those which have been totally secure, like Oman. The only exception is Iran. They have started from scratch. We expect countries such as Greece, Portugal, and Spain to largely benefit from the situation. And of course, then you've got Latin America, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, Argentina. But Latin American destinations could soon be affected by the spread of Zika virus. Let's move on to commodity markets. Gold was last trading at around 1190. Reached a 7.5-month peak of 1200.6 on Monday. That was on the back of risk aversion in the wider markets. I'll put up a 6-month chart. My target now looks like 50, given that we're in a financial and geopolitical tailspin. I wouldn't be surprised if this market goes into the teens. Jeff Curry, head of commodities research at Goldman Sachs. The most striking feature of this market relative to past cycles is the lack of a supply response, and the current surplus is probably more extreme than the industry downturn of 1998 to 1999. There was little evidence in London that the architects of oil's slump, Saudi Arabia and its Gulf allies Kuwait, the UAE and Qatar, were feeling enough financial pressure to reverse their policy of letting prices fall in order to squeeze rival suppliers. At the first big IP week party, Kuwait Petroleum Corporation welcomed guests with hospitality that was no less generous than in 2014. Beneath the chandeliers of a ballroom at the Four Seasons Hotel in London's Mayfair, tables were laden with shashlik, sushi, oysters, and even a whole lamb carved by a chef. In a separate room devoted to dessert, guests could discuss the latest developments in the oil market while spearing strawberries for dipping into a chocolate fountain. Marie Antoinette territory, isn't it? Iran, Saudi Arabia and Iraq are still turning up the taps, increasing the risk of further price losses, the IEA said in its monthly report on Tuesday. With the market already awash in oil, it is very hard to see how oil prices can rise significantly in the short term, the IEA said. The short-term risk to the downside has increased. And I also tweeted that the current Syrian situation signals an all-out crude oil production war. Put up a one-year chart of crude oil that's clearly headed lower again. The African Dean tweeted the most attractive markets in Africa in an easy-to-read graphic. It's all about commodity prices, really. You know that the ones at the top, Angola, Nigeria, South Africa, have been toppled big time. They're going to stay toppled for a while. The remarginalization of Africa, ISS, far from a continued scramble for Africa, as some analysts exalted only a few years ago, we're far more likely to see a potential remarginalization of sub-Saharan Africa in the years ahead. Rather than providing a breathing space for autocrats who believe in their right to govern indefinitely, we believe that the pressure from below will increase. Instability is moving from rebellions in distant rural districts to urban areas as social protest and violence around elections continue to rise. Expectations from African citizens are high, and leaders will inevitably struggle to respond to the demands of their young, restless, and connected urban populace. I've been saying that for a while, who are better educated than ever before, but with few employment prospects. Temporarily removed from the crosshairs of purportedly middling Western civil society, organizations and conditional financial support, African leadership will need to focus on improving service delivery and the rule of law, and demonstrate accountability for how to stay ahead of the instability curve. And I don't think the way the risk-reward is skewed, let's take Angola, right? I mean, you're not going to find Dos Santos moving ahead of that curve. If anything, he's going to get further behind it, as an example. I had that quote in the Guardian where I said in Zambia the currency has pretty much collapsed, not only in Zambia, adding that many commodity producing states in Africa have tipped over the edge because they're going to find it very expensive to borrow international money. I'm a hero. I created a country, says Riek Machar, driving South Sudan's brutal war. How would he like to be remembered? I created a country. I created a country. Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, on Tuesday joined thousands of supporters at Mary Fitzgerald Square in Newtown, Johannesburg, ahead of their march to the Constitutional Court. Dressed in a red t-shirt just like the thousands of his supporters, Malema was in conversation with party spokesperson Dozie, whose fashion sense was on display. He wore what looked like a pair of tights. Malema said, "We have a constitutional court and the Guptas to deal with it. They must leave South Africa. We have written 25 reasons why they should leave. There's nothing racist about it. They are criminals milking the state's money." Put up a photograph that Times Live put out of President Zuma. Headline is, "Must stop government scoring own goals." That goes to the point I wrote on the 14th of December when I said the markets are not interested in Zuma's explanations. They are seeing a South African president who has gone rogue. South African all-share tumbled 2.19% yesterday. It's down 4.63% so far this year. Dollar rand, I can put up a 6-month chart. I think it's a sell below with a 15 handle. About to get that in the next few minutes probably. Egyptian EGX 30 is down 14.3% this year. Thousands of Nigerian workers have taken to the streets in Abuja to express their anger at a 45% increase in electricity prices. I go back to that quote where I said I find it just extraordinary that such a brilliant President Buhari would risk it all on a bet on a single number in a game of roulette. Those are the odds of his no devaluation strategy. Nigerian all shares down 16.27% this year. Ghana to probably sell a Eurobond as early as June, since its finance minister Turkper helped finance the fiscal gap. Ghana's Eurobond currently trades at 15.21%, which says it all. Ghana Stock Exchange, however, is doing okay, minus just 0.61% this year. Harare seeks $1.5 billion to help save more than a quarter of the population from starving to death. As drought worsens, the government of Zimbabwe requires a total of $1.57 billion, with effect from February to December 2016. That's the Vice President, and I've written about that before. The El Nino phenomenon has parched Africa above Kenya, parched it below. Thousands of Chinese prostitutes have joined the scramble for African riches. This is Quartz Africa. Influx of Chinese prostitutes is a continent-wide phenomenon. As China moves into Africa, building highways, stadiums, striking oil deals, and opening special economic zones, practitioners of the oldest profession followed, catering to both Chinese expatriates and locals. Growing African purchasing power helps explain sex migration. More money for imported televisions, imported handbags, and yes, imported sex. Africa is a new El Dorado for the prostitution business. That's a thought. Senior management have been axed at the Kenya Ports Authority in an anti-corruption drive. That includes the managing director, Gichiri Ndua. I'll put up a photograph of Fort Jesus in Mombasa. That's where I was born. Not too far from Fort Jesus, the hospital, which is just round the bend. Kenya shilling, 101.79, 5-month high. I tweeted this morning, not many African currencies can say that they're at a 5-month high against the dollar. Shilling is one of them. Go back to my article, the Teflon shilling. Nairobi all-share down 2.79% year to date. And I wrote about this. Kenya and East Africa will be up with the rest of SSA slumps. I call Kenya and East Africa a bright star in what is increasingly a darkening sub-Saharan African sky. NSE 20 down 4.63% year to date. I like this photograph by Truth Slinger. Zika virus could prompt Kenya to pull out of Rio Olympics if outbreak reaches epidemic proportions. As I said yesterday in my commentary, international markets continue to witness unprecedented volatility. Japanese yen surged to its highest level versus the dollar since 2014. Japanese bonds are negative through to 10 years. Bank stocks across the globe have been hammered. Deutsche Bank now trading at less than 40% of book value. Here in Kenya, some good news. Number of militant attacks in Kenya dropped to 46 last year, about half the figure of 2014. Similarly, conflict events dropped as well to a 2012 low. So therefore, on balance, I think the tourism sector can now start to recover. And as I said, if you look at that article about tourism that I quoted from France 24, you've seen a diffusion of terror. So I think that's going to be actually, in a counterintuitive way, helpful to Kenya. Yesterday, Capjoria tea was up 2.479%. When you account for the bonus share issue, it's up 24% year to date, which isn't bad. At the macro level, tea exports led a 24% year-on-year rise in exports in shilling terms last year, largely thanks to a 58% jump in the value of tea exports as prices rose. Whilst the rest of the commodity complex is getting hammered, in my view, the soft commodity complex is actually supportive of higher prices. Safaricom eased back 0.93% to close at 16. It rallied 10.231% Jan 29 through Feb 3, then Feb 3 when it closed at a 2016 high, subsequently has corrected 4.19% off that 2016 high. Expected to turn higher pretty soon. Banks, I expect them to grind higher in anticipation of the full year results season. It's not rocket science here, it's not Deutsche Bank, it's lending with very, very big spreads. Barclays Bank was strong, up 2.491%. We had that big flight to quality at the end of last year. And I think Barclays, KCB and Standard Chartered were the big winners. Barclays continues to seek ways to downshift its Africa exposure, and this has to be factored into any equation about the share price. KCB ticked 0.62% lower off a 1-month high. EABL up 1.454% to a 1-month high, rallied 6.488% since releasing those very good first half results, where actually they repositioned lower, didn't they? They went for a bigger market, a lower price point, it seems to me. BAT unperturbed by the crossfire of influence and pending corruption allegations. And now we know that the US Department of Justice is taking a look. Closed that change at 800. Kenya up 23.85% since the 22nd of January, met some profit taking, eased back 2.96%. Once again, thank you for stopping by.